Well, welcome back to a second part of this program. Of course, this is Kivumbi2017 right here on KTN News. Just a reminder of what we did ask you earlier on our Twitter poll, and we did ask you, do you believe there's still room to heal and unite Kenya after tomorrow's poll? Do you believe that there's still room to heal and unite Kenya after tomorrow's poll? It's a poll that is turning into a controversial one, and the country is on the edge even as we count just hours, actually just 7 hours before the polls open tomorrow morning. We'd like to hear your view on this. Remember, Twitter handle is at KTN News. You can as well tweet me at Yusuf Ibra. The hashtag is Kivumbi2017. And earlier in the day, NASA leader Raila Odinga spoke to his supporters. And right after that, President Uhuru Kenyatta also spoke, and he has vowed that he will not allow the country to slide into anarchy as tensions rise ahead of tomorrow's presidential election runoff. Now, in a televised address to the nation, he called on Kenyans to turn out and vote peacefully. His main rival, Raila Odinga, has called on people to stay at home, saying the poll will not be free and fair. Let's listen into what the head of state had to say.
Are a nation guided by the Constitution and the rule of law. And anybody who wishes to express an opinion contrary to what has been planned for tomorrow must do so within the confines of the law. Those are the lines that have been drawn by our law. To step aside them is to step into anarchy. And as President of this great republic, sworn to defend constitutional order, I will not let that happen.
Of course, we'll discuss in detail that speech made by President Uhuru Kenyatta, as well as the speech which was made earlier in the day by NASA leader Raila Odinga. Of course, I have our guest with me in studio right here, and let me introduce them. We have lawyer Nelson Harvey. We have Washington Makudingo, who is a lawyer and a Jubilee strategist. We also have Richard Tuta, who is a security analyst. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the program.
Good evening.
So let me begin with you, Harvey, and there's some development from the Court of Appeal. Let's begin from the courts. And, the Court of Appeal has suspended, that ruling made by the Justice George Odunga, which declared the, appointment of the 290 returning officers illegal. So let me begin by asking, of course, NASA has been banking on this, saying that tomorrow's election is going to be illegal. Is this going to give IEBC some sort of a green light for tomorrow's election?
Well, even before the decision by the Supreme Court, the decision by the Court of Appeal staying the decision by the High Court, the IEBC had made up its mind that it will go on with the election on the account of the fact that the court had not quashed the appointment of the returning officers. Now, what is very intriguing is that very early in the morning today, before the Court of Appeal, with the expectation that the Court of Appeal will hear an appeal from the decision of Justice Mativo in ODM versus the Kure Court. But the Court of Appeal had taken a holiday as promulgated by the CS of Interior, Matiang'i, yesterday. Now, it's very intriguing that late at night, 3 judges of the Court of Appeal, Justice Githinji, Justice Sichale, and Justice Kome could be found to come and give a decision.
So are you, basically, are you surprised by that ruling coming in very late tonight?
Yes, absolutely. It's very surprising.
So what are you reading in this, basically?
There is a clear indicator that something is not right in the Republic of Kenya. The court system is being panel beaten to rule in a particular way, because if in the morning the court is not available because a holiday has been declared the day before, and then in the evening, then the same court is available to give a determination, whilst at the same time the Supreme Court, which has the final mandate of determining issues relating to the election of the president, cannot sit because of quorum, then on what basis were these 3 judges all of a sudden available to hear this matter?
I'm sure, Makudingo, you'll want to bite into this, and I'm very certain the Jubilee is smiling from, this statement that came from the Court of Appeal.
Thank you, Yusuf. First, Jubilee did not go to court, IBC did. Justice Odunga made a ruling that made sense. That didn't make sense at all. you make a ruling a day to elections, essentially saying that the returning officer, the deputies are in office irregularly, when IBC has no room for recourse. And I've gone through the ruling, the ex parte ruling by the Court of Appeal, the 3 Court of Appeal judges, and basically they're saying that the election stipulated within 60 days is expressing the sovereign will of the people of the Republic of Kenya. NASA people keep telling us that the sovereign will of the people is being expressed, that they're representing the people.
Yes.
The court has said that the sovereign will of the people must be expressed by these elections. In fact, the Constitution says that the sovereign will of the people can be expressed either directly or through the elected representatives. We have an opportunity tomorrow to express that sovereign will directly. No court, and the Court of Appeal judges have said that no court has the authority to interfere with the election date, and has gone ahead and suspended that decision.
Are you surprised? Because, you know, this is a ruling that came very late in the night. Earlier, the Supreme Court judges did not get to a quorum. That's why they adjourned the court. So from the Jubilee's point of view, you know, these are the same court that the president was against initially. So we're seeing a very different tone from the Jubilee side.
I do not know the reasons for the unavailability of the Supreme Court judges. The Supreme Court said that the DCJ was held somewhere, Justice Njoki was held somewhere. I mean, the explanations make sense. Harvey, as an advocate of the High Court, cannot come to this panel and tell the nation that it is surprising that 3 judges were found. Of course, you can find 3 judges of the Court of Appeal, and this is an urgent matter that cannot wait. Elections, polling stations open at 6 a.m. You cannot go into a presidential election that is guaranteed by the Constitution, that was given to us by the people of Kenya themselves, with such uncertainty over whether the presiding officers and the returning officers and their deputies are in office legally or illegally. The court had a responsibility to do something about this. There was no urgency in the morning. Yeah.
Let me allow Harvey to react to that. Richard, I'll come to you shortly. Let me allow Harvey to react to that before we cross over to the NASA leader's statement earlier in the day.
Well, I don't want to take advantage of Makodingo's lack of understanding of the law. But you see, the law cannot be applied in a very whimsical manner in which it seems to have been applied very late at night this evening. Look, Yusuf, as I've maintained much earlier, it is quite clear that we're living in a dictatorial regime where the executive and the legislature want the judiciary to always toe its line and give decisions that are guardedly in favor of the executive. And we cannot have such a situation, and then somebody comes and tells us that is the will of the people. Which people are they talking about? It is the people who came up with this constitution.
Yes.
And if for a fact the person who was sworn to uphold the constitution on behalf of the people, given the contract to administer the functions of the executive on behalf of the people, does not follow the constitution, it cannot lie in his mouth to come again and tell us that I'm doing this for the benefit of the people on the basis of the constitution that I swore to uphold. Yes. We're
going to discuss about the judiciary shortly, because the same judiciary not so long ago was praised all across not just the continent but across the world. But we're getting, you know, some kind of information that, you know, the judiciary has been compromised. So let's go straight to the NASA leader's speech today to his supporters and to Kenyans by extension. He has now turned NASA, which has been a political group, to a national resistance movement. Raila has not been very clear about this, Harvey. So how can you interpret that, first of all?
Well, I think Raila has been as clear as day is different from night. He said this will no longer be a movement, it will be a resistance. Now, it is quite clear what a resistance is. We are here enjoying freedom 54 years after, 54 years after independence, because there was a resistance to the colonial master. The United States enjoys its independence because there was a resistance at one particular point in time. Now, what is the nature of the resistance that Raila has indicated we're going to have? We're going to resist a dictatorial regime that does not want to follow the Constitution, that does not want to follow the rule of law. And it has been quite clear, if you look at the many decisions that have been made by the courts, the action that has preceded this so-called election schedule for tomorrow, clearly they're not being undertaken in the manner required by the Constitution. they are totally against the dictates of law.
I think it's important that you've mentioned this is a resistance, of course, that is not armed, because it's very easy for people, down there to interpret it differently.
Well, people need not interpret it differently, because it is as clear as it is. There will be a boycott of products, commodities and services provided or sustained by those individuals associated with those who do not want to uphold the rule of law. And look, where did we come from before we reached here? You remember in 2005, when there was the referendum in respect of the Constitution, it was indicated that that particular Constitution did not conform to the will of the people, and it was voted against. Then came 2010, when the Constitution that we currently have right now, who voted for it? Who voted against it? The people currently in power vehemently opposed that Constitution. It cannot be said that these are the people who are upholding the Constitution. They cannot say that they have sworn to uphold the Constitution. The Constitution has been hijacked by individuals who do not have any aspirations on the same issues that are found in the Constitution.
Yes.
And therefore, the resistance is to ensure that the Constitution is returned to the order. It is returned to the place in which it's supposed to be. It is exercised for the benefit of the people.
Yes.
Yes.
Harvey, I think it's important to clear the air about that matter once and for all. Now, Richard, from a security perspective, do you think there's any need for Kenyans to panic about this resistance movement that came up today?
I think at this point, until when NASA or the newly formed resistant movements comes out clearly and let Kenyans know their modus operandi, the problem is not in the what. The problem is on the how. Because they may decide that among the strategy that they are going to use are the legal means as provided for in the Constitution. They may also decide that they are going to combine both legal aspect as provided for in the Constitution and illegal means. And within illegal means, they may decide to use some aspects of armed and unarmed. Remember, the history of resistance movements all over the world has not been good history. If I can give an example, right from currently the Tamil Tigers, the SPLA, the Lord Resistant Army, all these zeroes into one thing, violence.
But I think NASA is yet to get there, right?
No. You know, everything must start from somewhere. Depending, and I repeat, depending on the modus operandi that NASA is going to use, it may slowly mutate to something else.
But it's still early. It's still early for anyone to judge, right?
It is early. It is early. But remember, within its toolbox,
yes,
it has got various options, both legal and illegal. If it decides it can mutate itself into an insurgency, it can also mutate itself into a guerrilla. It can also still mutate itself into, if it arrives at some thresholds that are set by the international community, it can still also mutate itself maybe into even a terrorist organization. But my prayer is, let them communicate very well to their supporters that what they want to use is the active non-violence as provided for in the Constitution.
Harvey, your reaction? Can NASA really mutate into some terrorist group if not checked?
Well, it has not been said that this revolution will be a militant revolution. And it must be understood that Kenya is a country that is governed by the rule of law. And as I've indicated much earlier, the rule of law, in the opinion of the pro-change activists, has been taken over by individuals who do not understand what the rule of law is. And to expect them to enforce the rule of law is to turn logic over its head. Because you've seen lately how they have been meting brute force on the people of Kenya, selectively and in a manner, so to speak, undertaking genocide by installment on particular communities in Kenya. It cannot be said that these people are upholding the rule of law. And when it is said that we want to restore law and order, we just mean that. We have the perfect constitution on earth. We don't need anything else. We do not need to suspend the constitution. But what is required is to ensure that we have individuals who uphold the aspirations in that constitution as holding office in this country.
Yes. Makodingo, I'm sure you'll want to comment on this. We're seeing, of course, a situation where a political kind of party or a coalition is changing into a resistance movement. What's your view on that?
That was my reaction when I heard the former Prime Minister talk about NRM. Of course, the first thing that came to my mind is Museveni and everything that he represents. But that aside, I think Raila is a con man. Let me explain. A couple of weeks back, he started up an M-Pesa system to collect money from his supporters in the guise of going for an election, when he knew very well that he had no intentions of going for that election. Collecting a lot of money that they have used to do foreign trips. A couple of days later, he goes back to them and tells them that they are no longer an alliance that seeks political power through the vote, through a democratic means, but they want to do resistance. But even more cornish is inability to understand his supporters. 90%, probably 90-95% of the people he was addressing today in that rally most likely lives in a house that is inhabited by a supporter of Uhuru Kenyatta. Most likely used a vehicle that is owned by a supporter of Uhuru Kenyatta. Most likely goes to work in a place whose majority of whose clients and customers are supporters of the president.
Is that supposed to stop NASA supporters from exercising
No, it's not
their
supposed to stop NASA supporters, but they actually asked for defiance, asked for, for people to reject goods that are produced by supporters of Uhuru Kenyatta. What I'm asking is, are these supporters supposed to move out of their houses today and go live out in the forest to start this resistance? Are mothers supposed to not buy milk tomorrow morning to give their children? Are people supposed to quit their jobs on Monday, on Friday when we resume work because they don't want to support supporters of Uhuru Kenyatta? It's a ridiculous call. And I think what I saw today was a man who has run out of options, who took an extremely bad decision to withdraw from the election, to boycott it. He has found himself in a situation where he doesn't know what to do. I actually think that he expected the Supreme Court, the decision of the Supreme Court today, coupled with Justice Odunga's decision, to help him postpone these elections. Of course, that has not happened. So suddenly, he finds himself in a situation where, from a prime minister, is now leading a resistance movement nobody understands. Usually, people move from resistance movements to political parties. This is a man who's led a series of political parties, including 2 political parties that have been in government. Now he's moving from a properly organized democratic system with a political party, an alliance that was somehow functioning.
Into a resistance
now he wants
movement.
To go into a resistance movement, nobody understands.
I think it will be only fair, allow Harvey to react to that. Do you think NASA's move is misguided from what Makodingo is saying?
Well, the commencement of a resistance has so many facets. One is a boycott. As I sit here, Yusuf, ordinarily I vote in Likuyani in Kakamega County. There is no way you expect me to go and vote if I'm seated here. So I will not vote. So this is part of the resistance. And if the Jubilee administration think that that is not the resistance, let's see at the end of the tally tomorrow when they'll be counting their votes. For a fact, close to 10 million plus individuals who voted on 8th of August will not have voted. And that is the first step towards the resistance, because we do not want to associate ourselves with a contaminated product. And one of the first contaminated products is the election itself, because it does not conform to the Constitution. Now, to that extent, it will be understood if a resistance commences in a manner rejecting an irregular way of installing a head of state, then it is a resistance. And as Raila Odinga has indicated, there will be many other ways of progressing this resistance in order that constitutional order is restored within 90 days and we have a credible election. We cannot have a credible election, one that has been interfered with, one where one of the commissioners has said they're being given advice from individuals who do not have the interests of the nation at heart from a chairman who not so long ago indicated that he's cornered. He's in a situation whereby he cannot make an independent legal decision because the advice he receives from the lawyers of the IEBC is not correct advice. Now, if Chebukati himself has said I cannot guarantee a free and fair or a credible election, who are us to waste our time to go and participate in that election? And even that notwithstanding, a decision had been made as early as 10th of October that we will not participate in this election because it is not a free and fair election.
Fair enough. And I think, Richard, Lawyer Harvey has once again cleared the air about NASA's kind of resistance. He has indicated that it's going to be unarmed. So from the security point of view, we've seen police clashing with NASA. When it was a coalition, now it's a resistance movement. Do you expect to see some sort of a change of tactics from the security officers when it comes to dealing with demonstrators?
One thing that we need to ask ourselves, for the last 1 year or so, is it that our security agencies have been more proactive in dealing with the demonstrators, or have they been dealing with issues of goons and something like that? Because we have, first of all, to define what is a demonstration and what are acts of unlawlessness. Because if we are not careful, as per the standards of the demonstrations, then we'll be, some people may be taking advantage on the disguise that they want to carry out a demonstration, and what they have been doing is looting. Secondly, when we talk about, there is this issue of the people saying excessive use of force and others saying no and all that. If you ask the police will tell you that we have used relative force. If you ask the civilians will tell you that what the police used is excessive force. Remember, this debate of use of excessive force is not something that it's going to end anytime
I think, Richard, this is not a debate anymore because the Kenya Human Rights Commission had put the number of those who have been killed at 34, and that was last week. We're getting reports that 4 more have been killed today. So we're seeing a force that is aimed at, killing people, literally.
It is very unfortunate. In fact, nobody can celebrate wherever a life is lost. But remember that there are institutions that are charged with the responsibility of arriving at a conclusion of whether an excessive force was used or not. And one of the institutions that has been charged with that responsibility is the courts, whereby the court has to look at the proportionality of the force that was used vis-a-vis the action that was intended by the would-be demonstrator or the would-be criminal. Remember, the work of the police,
yes,
as stated, is not to punish offenders, is to apprehend offenders. They are only supposed to use reasonable force to disarm the suspect.
Yes, and I don't know. Yes, Richard, and I don't know how reasonable this clip is going to be to you from your own point of view. Let's play a clip from Migori today. It's a clip that has gone viral on social media. I believe those security officers were escorting some ballot boxes into Migori. Let's watch first.
Nega koringo, ogoyo moringo mere.
Wapi korach kabisa. Wani jogiwana ko jomigori na piwa yawa. Si wanapiga wakati kama wadagi. Nei wadagi na sasa. Wadogi timbelana. Ya dogi timbelana dinga sai yawa na dinga sai.
Of course, there is a disturbing clip from Migori. Richard, I'll hear your view shortly. Now, Harvey, Richard talked about, the situation where police can be allowed to use some reasonable force. How reasonable was that clip from Migori?
Well, I think everybody can say there were no demonstrators there. There was no violence that the police were quelling there. This is a clear case where individuals purporting to be police officers because they are just in uniform, but in actual fact are criminals, are being used to target a particular community. And that is the reason why I've said this dictatorial regime is undertaking a genocide of the Luo and the Luyas by installment. There is no difference between what we are seeing now and what happened in Rwanda. There is no difference between what we are seeing now and what happened in Nazi Germany. And why all that military deployment? You're forcing people to go and vote? The people of Migori have said, we will not vote. Don't come and force us to vote. No. Let those who want to vote, vote in a peaceful manner, but those who do not want to vote should not be forced to participate in an exercise that they have said they don't have any faith in it. And that is why we are saying, once a democratic republic has been taken over by individuals who are keen to install a military kind of dictatorial regime, then the resistance must be undertaken to ensure that these things are done away with. How do we take to account police officers, so to speak, who have undertaken the exercise in the clip you've just shown us?
Yeah, and speaking about the clip, Makodingo, of course, Jubilee and of course IEBC, they expect to have some sort of voter turnout come tomorrow morning when the polls are going to open. From that clip in Migori, do you think voters are really going to turn up and vote?
Yusuf, what I have seen in that clip, of course I understand the language, but what I've seen in that clip is a government that has assured the nation that there will be security for those who are willing and ready to go and vote, like myself, tomorrow morning. A government that is doing everything it can to ensure that every citizen in this country, including in Migori, that is highly cosmopolitan, and which has quite a significant support base for the president, get an opportunity to vote. Now, the decision not to vote is individual. So there will be a polling station that will be open. Those who are willing to go and vote will go. Security will be provided. And government has made this guarantee, and we've seen that guarantee in action. Now, about the boycott or about voter turnout, other than the 3.5 counties that, of Luo Nyanza, and 3.5, I mean Siaya, Kisumu, Homa Bay, and the half of Migori, because the other half is strongly Jubilee. Other than the 3.5 counties that Raila Odinga controls in Luo Nyanza, there is going to be elections in every other county. Now, I know for a fact, because I've been quite closely involved, that all the counties in Ukambani, where his former running mate comes from, are going to vote. In every polling station, people are going to come up to vote. This nonsense of a resistance movement has been is not selling. And we will see this. I have heard them saying there'll be over 10 million people not showing up. I can guarantee you that there will be more than 10 million people showing up to vote tomorrow in this election to participate, to exercise their democratic right that was given that they gave themselves on August 27th, 2010.
I'm sure we'll compare notes once the results are going to be released by IEBC. But we've talked about Kisumu, Nyanza, these areas where people might not come out to vote. This is a significant majority. So there are many people who are questioning the legitimacy of this election.
What makes an election legitimate? What is an election? Let's begin with what is an election. An election is a polling station opening, every election material being available, people being given an opportunity peacefully to go to that polling station and vote. Now, if people choose not to show up, the polling station will return a nil result. Now, come on, let's also be realistic. The entirety of Luo Nyanza has 1.8 million votes. Kenya has 16.6 million registered voters. How can you possibly say that a boycott by 1.8 million voters, or a section of them,
don't you think their constitutes
illegitimacy?
Yes. And anyway, let me cross over to Richard for now. Richard, once again, let me go back to that clip from Migori. You're a security expert. Do you think police can use a different means, perhaps, in dealing with people?
What is important currently is for various security agencies to know when to be a fox and when to be a lion. They should know when to use force and when to use diplomacy, according to the necessity of time. But going back to the issue of Migori, these are issues that need to be investigated. Let us not worship cases of police brutality. And let us not also use an isolated case. Let each and every case treated with the sincerity that it deserves. So that let the police officers not be given a blank check when it comes to dealing with demonstrators, and let also criminals not be given a blank check when it comes to carrying out their illegal acts.
I think that's fair enough. Harvey, I'm sure you'll want to react to that, but first, we promised our viewers that we're going to talk about the speech there that was made by the president during his address to the nation. And this is what he said partly, that the ruling that was made after the August 8 was a sign of maturing democracy. And it's the same president, who called these judges from the Supreme Court, crooks and all these names. So are you seeing some sort of about turn from the president? And are you surprised by this move?
Well, I really don't know how to comment, because if you remember, before even Raila Odinga took his petition to court, the first person who encouraged him to go and have the dispute resolved by the court of law was Uhuru Kenyatta. But within 1 hour of the decision of the Supreme Court invalidating his election, he was raging with a lot of anger, calling the judges wakoras. Now, it looks like these wakoras tend to change their color many times, at times being wakora, at times being good people, at times the Constitution being used as the best Constitution, at times the Constitution being used as a civilian coup. So we really do not understand what direction we're being given to follow. But suffice it to say, yes, we will still maintain the position that whoever is currently holding the power in the Republic of Kenya does not have the best interests of the people of Kenya, does not seem to understand what the Constitution provides. Because it must be understood, the Constitution was intended for the people. The sovereign in the Constitution is the people, not the president. So if you see things being done in the manner in which we've seen lately, and this is no longer in the realm of conjecture, because not so long ago we were told by somebody in Jubilee that the second term of Uhuru's presidency will be very brutal. And what brutality is this that is explained under the Constitution? The Constitution does not talk about any brutality. And if brutality is to be meted on the people of Kenya, then that cannot be said in any way whatsoever to be something that emanates from the power given by the Constitution.
Yes, Harvey, allow me to zero in on the president's speech once again. And Makodigo, I'd like to hear your honest opinion on this. Are we in a country where we tend to support a certain institution when that institution favors us?
Yusuf, the president won the election by over 1.4 million votes on August 8th. Quite honestly, his reaction was admirable. If it was me, I'm not so sure I would have reacted the way he did. And
so you believe you overreacted then?
He's talked about this himself. He said he saw the verdict, he was angry, it is human. In fact, I think he was extremely controlled in how he reacted to this, given that he won the election by over 1.4 million votes, and the Supreme Court casually said, votes don't count. Today we saw a Supreme Court where numbers really did matter. So the way the president reacted, I probably would have reacted worse. And he's come around. He was clear that day, within that 1 hour, that he respects the decision, that he'll go back to campaign. He hit the campaign trail another hour later. He's been campaigning every single day for the last 56 days. He's done everything a Democrat in his position will do. In fact, he's done better than any other person who has ever found themselves in a position that he found himself in, where he won an election, was nullified, has ever done. We are ready for an election tomorrow. And he said this, he's campaigned this out, he's gone around the country. What more do you want from the man? And it's interesting how NASA praised a section of the Supreme Court ruling, then the part that says elections must be held within 6 days doesn't quite suit them, so they want
I think the same can be said of Jubilee. Anyway, we're almost out of time, unfortunately, and I'd like to hear your final comment. All of you, you have 30 seconds each. Let me start with Harvey. So tomorrow, the country is going to have that election, although significant majority are going to boycott. So what next after that election? Very briefly.
Well, Yusuf, I think we've made it quite clear, and we do not speak as politicians, we speak as lawyers. There will be no election tomorrow, because the election that had been scheduled for tomorrow collapsed by operation of law upon the withdrawal of Right Honorable Raila Odinga on the 10th of October. What has been done thereafter is to patch up the entire process, to sanitize it, so that it may have some legitimacy. But the fact of the matter is that there will be no election tomorrow.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that will happen tomorrow is most likely to be a coronation of somebody as the head of state.
I think you've delivered your point. Makodingo, your final comment. What next after tomorrow?
Fellow Kenyans, in under 7 hours, polling stations open. Join me and the millions of Kenyans who respect the Constitution of the Republic, who want to participate in the democratic process. Let's go to our polling stations. Let's make a choice for this country, for today, and for the future of our children. Thank you.
I think they've heard you. Richard, I know you're a security analyst, but you're also a Kenyan. What is your final comment on this?
I hope the security systems have got a strategy tomorrow to protect those who believes like Makodingo that there is an election tomorrow, and also for those who believes like lawyer Avi that there is no election tomorrow. All these people have got a right to be protected as provided for in the Constitution.
Well said. Thank you very much. Richard Tuta is a security analyst. Washington Makodingo is a lawyer and Jubilee strategist. And lawyer Nelson Harvey. Thank you, gentlemen, for your input. Now, finally, before we end the show, there's no way we're going to end without our day's proverb. Let's take a look at it. Okay, very interesting Nigerian proverb there. Now, we did ask you a question on our Twitter poll tonight, and we did ask you earlier, do you believe there's still room to heal and unite Kenya after tomorrow's poll? We're going to get the percentages there very shortly. But let me go through some of your feedback here at... let me just take a few here. At Tenega Houston says, not really, it's done, the only solution here. Okay. We're getting a lot of interesting reaction here on social media. We are not sick nor divided. It's normal to have supporters and opposition in every poll. I think this is the only sent comment here from Frederick Kinyu. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to read all your tweets. Many thanks for your feedback. And thank you very much for watching Kivumbi 2017 right here on KTN News. Many thanks for watching. Bye-bye and enjoy the rest of your night.